Okay, welcome back to the second episode of Adobe Photoshop and using Photoshop. So what we're going to do now is actually open up an image in Camera Raw. Now Camera Raw is great for opening up photos quickly, doing some quick edits to improve the look of the photograph, and also change the photograph so it looks slightly different. And how we do that is you can go to File, click on Open As. I'm just going to use this image that I've got off Office Clip Art. So I'll select that one, and you can see here, normally what would happen is you'd have it set, this would be set for Photoshop. We're going to make sure we select Camera Raw. By selecting Camera Raw, what that'll do is open up in Camera Raw, and we now have this big dialog box that comes up, and we get to change things in a slightly different way. So I'll go through how I'd normally go through changing a photograph really quickly, just so you can see how it's done. Now, up the top here, you've got various tools, for instance, like getting your white balance, cropping tool here as well. If you'd like to actually add a graduation filter, you can do that as well. If you want to do some adjustments, you can do that as well. You can do some red eye removal, and you've also got the spot removal if you want to clean up a few areas. Now those, just have a play around and see what they look like, and you can see how they work. But to start off, what I would normally do is go to here. You have a couple of options. The image, as you can see, this is what it looks like as shot. If you click on Auto, you can see it changes it and tries to work out what the best white balance for this image is. But looking at that, I really don't like that. What you can do is you can start off by changing the color. So if you want a mainly blue type image, you can always slide that back. You can see that the blacks here become more blue. If I take that back across here, you can start to see some of the blacks coming through here. Or if you want to tint it, so it's a little bit more green, or a little bit more sort of reddish and purplish, you can go to that side. Or if you click on Auto, as you can see, it sets it up to what it thinks it should be. But I actually like the way it was as shot, so we'll start off with there. Next thing is here, you've got all of your exposure settings and changes that you can make. If you click on Auto, it'll have a look at the image and say this is what we think is probably best for it, and it'll adjust everything as you can see there. Go back to the default, you can see that's what it looks like. Now what your exposure does is makes it darker, but it makes it lighter. So if you want to have overexpose your image like that, you can do so, and you can have it really blown out so there's too much there. But I'll just open up just a little bit. Your contrast, basically that's like your sharpening tool. So with this, I wouldn't move that too around. Highlights for this image, I'd actually bump them up quite a fair bit so you can see the highlights coming out. Also with the shadows, see how it's brightening back up again. May have to bring my exposure back down a little bit. The white areas, I'll actually take a bit of that white out, and some of the blacks, I'll actually let them go up a little bit more. So, as you can see there, with the shadows, probably need to bump it up a little bit so it becomes more clearer in here. Clarity, it acts a bit like a sharpening tool, just makes it look really nice. Vibrance basically makes the image really red or takes some of the color out of it, depending on what you're trying to go for. But I'll leave that at 0, and saturation just saturates the color a little bit more. So that's probably where I'd have that image, probably about there. I'm happy with that, the way it looks. Now the next thing you can also do is you can go to your curves and also your tone curve. Now normally, depending on the image, I either have a strong contrast or have a medium, but that's again up to your personal choice. So for this one, I'm going to go for a strong contrast. From there, normally if I've taken a shot myself, I would go through and use the lens correction to actually fix up the lens. Sometimes what happens is your image tends to bow a little bit because the actual lens is curved. That's a great tool if you're taking your own photographs. You can also use some effects if you want to in here. You can change a few things, so if you want to put a bit more grain so it looks a little bit more grain, you can do that. And you can also go through and just, if you know what your camera is, you can put that in there and actually change the camera profile. But that's probably as much as what I do with Camera Raw in this section here. Now with the next section, because I've lightened this up, I actually want to put a bit more of a blue color coming through here. So I'm going to go to my graduated filter. I'm only going to go to where the board is, and you can see what it's done is it made that sky look a little bit darker through there. Now I can actually change the temperature. You can see, bring it back there, exposure, bring it back a bit more just to get it a bit bluer. Maybe drag that down just a little bit more. Okay, and I'm pretty happy with the way this looks. I know all this area here is blown out too much, but that's the look that I'm going for because I want to have that really high contrasting look. Once I'm happy with all that, I can click Open Image. I could save the image. There's two choices you can do with that, but I prefer to open the image up because normally what happens with the JPEG image that you get is you find that unfortunately the color's washed out a bit. So what I would normally do is press Ctrl J to make a duplicate layer. I would then go to my blend mode. I would then go to soft light, and as you can see from there, it's very subtle, but actually brings back some of your color. You can see in the areas just here and also on the board. When I turn it off, it's a bit darker. I turn it on, it just brightens up the image again, and that's where I'd save that image. And that's the end of just using Camera Raw.